This is the Get Vocal podcast.
Okay guys, welcome back to the Get Vocal podcast. Tonight we are at Lancashire Army Cadets with adventurer, best-selling author, former soldier and most importantly Blackpool born and raised Mr. Jordan Wylie. So
thank you for having me. Good to be in the company of Blackpool lads whilst we're here behind enemy lines, not only in a military establishment but in Preston.
Barbed wired outside and we're inside custody. It's fine, isn't it? So we're going to kind of go straight into it, and we ask the same question to everybody who's on the podcast, and it's a difficult one, but what does mental health mean to you?
Yeah, it is a deep question. For me, mental health is, it's such an important topic and question, but for me it's like the way I describe it is the way I would talk to cadets or school children. We often think about our physical health. If we get injured, we go and see a doctor or a medic or tell somebody, but with mental health, for some reason we seem to want to lock it up inside, whether it's for embarrassment, whether it's because we're not comfortable talking about our emotions, especially as men. But I'm, as you introduced, I'm a former soldier. I'm an adventurer who does quite extreme adventures. But so on the outside, people might think, oh, he's a bit roughy tufty. He's doing all these things. He won't have any issues mentally. I have so many challenges with my mental health. I've been on medication for the last 8 years. I take sertraline every day, which surprises a lot of people. And I've been in very dark places and sometimes go back to them. And for me, it's about awareness. It's about opening the discussions like you guys are doing amazingly. But I think that's why I'm doing what I'm doing now, which is being in the outdoors, because that's what I actually call it: green therapy and blue therapy. If I'm in the sea, it's blue therapy. If I'm in the countryside in the mountains, it's green therapy. And that's, like, for me, is the best medication in the world. And I say that as someone who takes tablets every day, but the best medication is probably number 5 for me. Even though it's something I take every day, I would say getting outside, I would say exercising, I would say talk to people, and I would say look out for each other as well. It's like the old aeroplane oxygen mask, isn't it? You can't be something for everybody else if you're not all right yourself. It's so important, and I think social media is something that really affects people around mental health, because we're in a world now where, and I've been there, where you're constantly seeking validation of strangers. Like, I remember I used to be chasing likes and shares and impressions because brands that I'm sponsored by need that content creating, and it's quite a toxic cycle to get into, where you're judging your self-worth based on what complete strangers think of you. And not only I found when I'm doing that, I'm also neglecting the actual people next to me, my loved ones, my family, who actually there for me all the time. Because I'm so focused on this screen, I end up neglecting the ones that are there for me. These complete strangers who might like your posts or make a comment. When I'm in my dark place or I'm feeling very low or depressed, they're not ringing me or checking in on me or seeing how I am. They're just people who are stats and data on a platform, really. And so I've been on a bit of a journey myself with mental health, and still am, and still have tough days. But as I say, it's things like getting outside, it's talking, it's and I think that's why this is such an important project to open up and talk, because hopefully, as you've already seen in your own work, it's encouraging others to do that. Hopefully, if someone like me can talk openly about how normal it is, then hopefully that will encourage somebody else.
I think that's a really big thing, especially in the first 2, 3 or 4 lines that he said about social media. Is going back to what Brett said on his, and he said about we go and see a doctor for physical health, but for mental health we just ignore it. And that was one of the first things that Critch said. And Critch said that when we asked him the same question, and he said, I don't know why we don't do it. But the green therapy and the blue therapy is really interesting, because it's something that we've got. I'm pointing to Chum, but he's behind the camera. But we've got a friend, and he did all the Wainwrights during COVID. And last week we were in the Lake District and went on the paddleboard into the Coniston Lake. And like you say, there's nothing. When you're there, there's no hum, there's no sirens, there's no talking. It is the most serene place where you can be, obviously, in the ocean. And that blue therapy, I've never heard that term before, but you've said it and I've resonated with so much already.
Yeah,
it's great.
Blue therapy is a critical part of my life and how I look after myself now. I have to be near the sea. I have to be near the coast. I have to be in water, on water, playing with water in some way, and that is it's therapeutic. It's got scientifically proven medicinal value to be. And you know, when I attempted to paddleboard around Great Britain about 4 years ago, the people on the coast are happier. The people on the coast, they have more hospitality. The people on the coast, they got a spirit of adventure. You know, random strangers offer me a bed for the night, or a room, or a hot meal, or a shower. You wouldn't get that in the centre of Blackpool or Preston or London or wherever, you know. But people like in Cornwall and Devon or the tops of Scotland, they get it. You know, they just really get it, whatever it is.
See, it's funny you should. I spend a lot of time down in Cornwall. We've got family down there, and it's hard to explain to anybody that's not really kind of got the affiliation. But as soon as you go there, there's just something about the place, and you feel like all your stresses have been lifted. As soon as you hit so our family are in Falmouth. As soon as you see the welcome to Falmouth sign, for me it's just like, right, I'm kind of home, but not home at the same time. You go anywhere near the sea, go down to Gilly Beach, round there, and it's just thousands of people just on surfboards, paddleboards, in the sea while swimming, and there's no care in the world. Their life is so much different. We have like a live to work mentality up north. Yeah. Down there they work to live, but as soon as they finish at 3 o'clock, they're out on the boards, they're out on the boats, they're out fishing, and it's incredible to see, because you can see that blue therapy as such is right at action, isn't it?
100%. It's so important, and doctors should prescribe it. I think before you start looking at, you know, I'm not a medical professional, I can't advise, but for me, we should prescribe more outdoor time to young people, especially because I think young people as well, they have challenges that perhaps we didn't have necessarily. You know, I didn't have Facebook or anything like that when I was a teenager, and that presents a lot of challenges for teenagers today that we didn't grow up with. And I think you're constantly being compared. You're constantly comparing yourself to this picture perfect life. You know, everyone wants to be Instagrammable these days. Everyone, you know, and I'm guilty of it as well. Do you know, if everyone's got a filter on every photo, we're all made to feel that we don't look good enough. Our bodies aren't good enough. Our faces and I have a bit of a bee in my bonnet about celebrity culture, because I work in a world, when I'm working on TV with Channel 4's Hunted and Celebrity Hunted, where people assume that you're in this celebrity world. But for me, I work with lots of celebrities, and if I'm honest, a lot of them are quite uninspiring. You know, they sell their soul to whatever the latest product is that they've never tested or used, but because they're getting paid to put it online and encouraging younger people. So I think with certainly these influencers, or whatever you want to call them, I think great influence should come with great responsibility. There's no accountability to these people. You know, you can come out of one of these shows on ITV or Love Island or whatever. And I'm not talking about everybody, because there's good people come out of them shows, but stereotypically you'll come out of that show, you'll be offered all sorts of endorsement deals, and you've actually got more followers and influence than mainstream politicians or business leaders. That has to come with some form of accountability to society, because all the teenagers, all the kids are looking at you, and they're using you as a benchmark for role modelling. You know, when I go into schools all the time and speak, and I ask kids what they want to be, they don't want to be like astronauts or police officers or doctors or nurses or soldiers. They want to be an influencer. They want to be a celebrity. They want to be famous. They don't even know why they want to be famous, but they want to be famous. And that's this culture that we've created as a society that is not good for people's mental health.
I think there was a piece of research a couple of years ago. I think they went into schools and they were looking at like future careers, and I'm pretty sure like 67% of the survey, they wanted to grow up and be like a YouTuber and a blogger and stuff. And you just think, like, when I was at school, it was either a lawyer, dentist, like say soldier, like professionals, like business professionals. Now people want to like just make money by being surrounded by this top.
And I said the same thing. Someone told me recently in a school, they said, I want to be a YouTuber. And I said, oh, right, so you want to go into like, you know, videography, filmmaking? No, I want to do it in my bedroom with my iPhone. And I'm like, there's a proper career path there if you break it down into, you know, into film production and things. But no, it's... And the problem is because one or two people out of the millions have made a lot of money from it, people think you can just do it very quickly and very easily, and obviously that isn't the case. It's
a crazy state of times I think we live in. Like, we're in a point where social media is either... It's on a tipping point, isn't it? When you look at X, or X formerly known as Twitter, whatever you want to call it, it's kind of... There's a point where people are kind of starting to fight back a little bit, aren't they? And they're kind of calling people out for this negative behaviour, and the kind of like the community notes aspect of it, where people aren't just believing anything they see on Twitter anymore. And I think that's really good. So going back to that, when you kind of going through your challenges, was being outside, being in the water, was that something you've always been consciously aware of, or is that something you've kind of started since you went through challenges and you battle with your mental health? And
I've always loved adventure and I've always loved being outside, but I've never really thought of it as a way to manage my mental health. I've just loved it because of the fun of being on a paddleboard or going for a run or whatever. Whereas now I consciously do it for my own mental well-being, because I know that anytime I've ever gone on the water or anytime I've ever gone outside, I've never come back in feeling worse. I've only ever felt better. You know, and sometimes in the adventure world, especially like what I'm doing now, we call it type 2 fun, where it's not that much fun when you're doing it, but when you've done it, you'll feel great. And that's what exercise is about. It's never great going on doing a 10k run. You know, you're going to feel tired, you're going to feel stressed, you're going to want to give up. But I can promise you will feel better the moment that you finish it than you did before you started.
I think that's the battle, and we've said that at the group this week. We were talking about blokes that wanting to exercise more, and it's like the thought of doing it is what puts them off. But actually, they know that they're going to feel 10 times better when they've done it. It's just that
the hardest bit is getting your trains on and walking out the door.
Yeah, massively.
Because then you're on your way, and you know, and it's also routine. And I always say to young people, like in the military, what I learned was, you can't be motivated every day. We are humans. We will not be motivated every day. There'll be days when you don't want to get out of bed. There'll be days when you really can't be bothered. I have those days. You'll have those days. But what you can be, what I learned in the military, is disciplined, which means getting up even on those days you don't want to, and turning up and showing up and giving it your all. So I think discipline is a key factor what people often overlook when it comes to achieving goals, whether they're small or big. Everyone thinks, well, I'm not motivated, but you don't have to be motivated, and you won't be motivated. But use discipline as a benchmark.
I think that goal setting is something that's key, and I think so. Like, I've gone through my own battles, and one of the things that I was told by a therapist at the time, and she's kind of revolutionised the ways I think, but she said to me, like, in January you've got to set yourself a year of goals. You've got to set them goals, and you've got to set the 5-year plan. I always used to live like a year by year. Never used to think, oh, in 5 years I want to be here, because I just wanted to appreciate everything in the moment. January for me now, I'll set a list of goals and it's that. Once you tick them off one by one, you get this like natural adrenaline rushes you would do when you've done a 10k or obviously don't do many 10ks anymore, but you do get the same adrenaline rush, and that kind of brings me on to where we are. So obviously we're a day out. You'll be finishing tomorrow. Yeah. How's it been? Talk like challenge wise, mentally? Has there any been like where you've thought, do I really want to still do this? Or
yeah, I think it's been a great challenge. So for the viewers or the listeners, Tower Power 2024 has been basically an eco triathlon to try and get from the Leaning Tower of Pisa to the Eiffel Tower to Blackpool Tower, and we threw in another tower on the way, the Spinnaker Tower in Portsmouth. Which was great fun because we got to abseil it. But the main objective was one to do something and give back to Blackpool, which was the legacy of Jordan Banks, who obviously was tragically killed 3 years ago now. So to really make sure that everyone knows the great work that's continuing in his name. So I think legacy is really important, because for me it's about, that little Jordan, 9 years old, and the impact that he's still having now. People are doing fundraisers, he's inspiring people, and to have that sort of legacy at 9 is incredible, because most people will go a lifetime and won't have that legacy. So I think it's just amazing that someone so young can have such a positive impact even after they've gone. And I think we as Blackpool Community Society, we have a responsibility to make sure that continues, because it's tragic for anyone to be taken, but for a parent to outlive their children is just wrong on so many ways. But so yeah, Jordan Banks. Second was to raise funds and awareness of the Army Cadets and their charity, and thirdly was for me to test myself to see how sustainable I could be, because I've been travelling the world as a serial offender of climate issues for years. I'm flying on a 747 every week to Antarctica, the high Arctic, wherever, the Himalayas, on adventures. And when I was near the North Pole last year, I come across a polar bear that had been tragically killed. It had been shot because it was entering the local villages, and I never really understood all these climate issues. Obviously, you hear about the buzzwords and all this greenwashing that goes on, but I thought the only way I did terrible at school in Blackpool, but I've always learned through adventure. I've always learned how to take risks, how to even maths and things like that, speed, time, distance, because I've got to work out how many calories I need, how far is it to the next checkpoint. So everything that I've learned. Most things that I've learned have come through adventure, and for me that's a lot more fun than sitting in a classroom of 4 walls where I got diagnosed, again digressing, I got diagnosed with ADHD last year. And then the world started to make sense to me, because I'm like 100 mile an hour. There's so many things going on in my brain. But now it makes sense, because when I was back in Blackpool, I was a naughty little kid at 14, 15. I was always in the police station. And to me, being in that police cell was just like being in a classroom. I felt locked in. I felt I had all this energy and I just needed to get outside. And that's what the outdoors allows me to do. And because I'm in the outdoors, I flourish, I learn, I thrive in the outdoors, and I'm able to do some good things for other people as well. And that's, doing this, I've learned so much about sustainability. And I'm not, and as I say, I'm not someone who's a vegan or a vegetarian or a green warrior or anything like that. I'm just trying to learn and trying to help other people learn on the journey. But yeah, there's been tough parts, of course, going through some massive, seriously big hills, doing it on a wooden bike, doing it, crossing the ocean on a kayak made of rubbish, literally made of rubbish, plastic bottles and things. But it's, for me, I've always said to young people, it's how you grow, it's how you learn. I think when you're uncomfortable, when you're out of that comfort zone, and when you're under stress, that's when the magic starts to happen. That's why we put cadets out in the field for a week and do camps, because it's not enjoyable when you're chucking down with rain and you're cold and you're shivering. But that's where you start to find out what people are really all about and what they're made of. And it goes back to that type 2 fun, because it's not that enjoyable when I'm in. I got knocked off my bike in Paris by a lorry driver. I've torn knee ligaments down in Italy, and it's painful and it's hurting. But again, it comes back to sort of mindset and things, and knowing that, going back to mental health, really, I knew that if I just kept moving in the right direction and kept turning those pedals, I'll get to Blackpool in the end. For me, it wasn't about how quick I can do it, how good. I'm not the fastest, I'm not the fittest, I'm not the best at anything I do. But a bit like life and with mental health, you just keep moving forward in the right direction, and it doesn't matter what pace you're going, you'll get to where you need to get to. And go at your pace. People say to me, you tell anyone you're going to run a 5k, a 10k, a marathon, they'll always say to you, what time are you going for? And I always say, I'm going for the time of my life, mate. That's the only time I'm going for.
That's something, obviously, the other day, you put a LinkedIn post, and something that I've always stood by since I've kind of embarked on my journey is, it's never really about the end goal with mental health. It's always about the journey to where you want to be.
Yeah.
And like when you're at the pits and you're at the bottom of where you think you can't go any lower, something will take you lower.
Yeah,
but at the end of the day, the journey feels a lot sweeter. Like 4 years ago, Mr. COVID, didn't think I'd be here. Yeah. One with you after you've just cycled from Pisa, but like didn't think I would be here. So to be here making a change one person at a time, the Get Vocal groups, like you say, it's the journey, the most important.
Definitely.
Thing, isn't it?
And people say to me often, it's a hot topic debate. Is it the destination? Is it the journey? And I'd add something else to that for me, it's about the people, because that's my favourite thing. Meeting you guys, meeting people in all these different little villages. That I'd arrive in a village that I'd never heard of in Italy and France, and I'd leave with great friends. I was there as a stranger, and I left with amazing friends that I'll stay in touch with. And I think that's what it's about. It's about that human connection. And because of COVID, because of the world we live in with all these screens and digital devices, human connection is like, for me, it's the fabric of society that makes us who we are, and we've lost a lot of that over the last few years. Everyone wants to do a virtual Zoom or a meeting like that now, don't they? And you can't beat this human interaction where you're looking people in the eyes, and and people are more likely to open up if you sat in front of them, having a brew or whatever, than be through a screen as they sit on all day.
100%, and that's obviously where Get Vocal's born. It's just a non-judgmental talking group, and I think that we're starting to see a bit more of a rise of that now, aren't we? I think the stigma is slowly dropping, especially this week. It's a mental health awareness week across wherever we are, across the country, across the world, wherever you want to be. But the term movement is the motive of this year's Mental Health Awareness Week. And obviously we've talked about your challenges, but it's such a big thing, movement, isn't it? It's like you say, you can't be sedentary. Like for me, if you feel you're going down, you've got to go out. You've got to hit the pavement. You've got to go for a swim. You've got to go and play football. Or it's so key. So what if someone's listening to this and they're kind of like, no, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to sit. I'm going to just think about everything. What would you say to somebody?
Yeah, and I've been in that position many times. Do you know, a lot of my challenges mentally don't come from things that people would expect. They don't come from the military. They don't come from adventure stuff. They come from the stuff that we all go through. Relationships breaking down, not seeing my daughter as much as I should do, I was supposed to get married this year, and I came out of a relationship last year, not really out of the blue, but she left me and she chose to move on, and that like shattered my world. And for me, I was in a hole. I couldn't get out of bed. The anxiety was like the acids in my stomach. It was crippling. The anxiety. And years ago, if you'd have told me so and so's not in work today for anxiety, I'd have thought, oh, they're lazy. What's anxiety? I used to like dismiss it. I can even see and hear myself dismissing someone saying they're not in again because of anxiety. And I've been physically crippled in bed with anxiety that I could not get out, like where I thought I'm dying or something. And yeah, I think going for walks, that's what, when I was feeling like that, I would go in for walks, breathing exercises, ice baths, all those things that I used to do when I was really at my lowest, they helped me so much. But I think ultimately movement for me, what does it mean? It means, again, it just means getting outside, and whether you don't even have to be running, you don't have to be cycling, you don't have to be doing anything ridiculously strenuous, just going for a walk in nature, even if it's for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is, I promise you will feel better. I find as well when you're moving at the same time in the outdoors, it turns the cogs in your brain, and you start getting like clarity of thoughts. Things start to make sense, and my brain's always a bit of a mishmash of everything. But when I'm out cycling or running or walking, I start to be able to like put things in folders in my head, and give myself clarity of like, because otherwise I'm just overwhelmed with information and don't know where to start. But yeah, it's life can be tough sometimes for everybody, and what I would say though is the key thing for me is never give up. Too many good people have gone too early from this world, and there's always someone there who will listen. It might not seem it, and you might not be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel yet, but you've just got to take sometimes don't think too far ahead. I think for me, there's the dwelling on the past, which causes a lot of depression, because you can't change the past. It doesn't matter what you've done, whether you've been the bad guy or whether someone's been the bad guy to you. You can't change the past. The only thing you can do with the past is learn from it and take whatever lessons are there to learn, and then keep moving forward. At the same time, you can't look too far in the future. With little Jordan Banks, tomorrow's never promised for any of us. So being present is so important. Feeling the moments, not be thinking about your phone or what you've got to do next. Being, looking people in the eye and being actively present and engaged in whatever it is you're doing. But the most important thing is just to never give up, whatever it is you're going through, whatever challenge you're facing. The light will come, and the clouds will part. It will, and sometimes you can't see that. Honestly, I've cried myself to sleep many a time thinking this is the end. But the good times come again. And I'm not even saying that, being really honest, I don't think things necessarily get easier, but you get stronger and wiser. I don't think the world gets easier for anyone. If you've lost someone or you're grieving something, I don't necessarily think you get over that, but you become more resilient, definitely. And you definitely can pick the lessons about what you got wrong or what you need to do better next time. You
develop your own coping mechanisms, don't you? And figure out what works for you in terms of, like, we say this every Monday, like, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. You talked about being outdoors, ice baths. That might not work for everyone, but it's about testing, trialling things. What works for you, really?
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes, people worry a lot about being lonely and things like that. And I've come to learn to be comfortable in my own peace. Society makes us think we've got to do things, like you say, a certain way, because probably we've seen it on social media again or something. But find out what works for you. I have such a diverse group of friends now, from much younger to much older people. I sometimes once a week go for a chat with an old veteran who's like 80 odd years old, and on the face of it we wouldn't have anything in common, but I can sit there listening to him and I find it fascinating because he's got so many stories and experience, and I think, as well as talking, which we're encouraging people to do, also don't undervalue the skill of listening, because there's a lot of people who've probably been where you are. I do a lot of like corporate talks for businesses, and always at the end of every conference, people aren't that bothered about my adventures or the things that I'm excited about. They want to talk about mental health. It'll be a super-powered CEO or a board of directors, and they're having the same problems that I'm having, or that so-and-so is having. Everybody's got these things going on in their lives, but it's just about, as you say, finding what's your coping mechanism. How do you deal with that stress or anxiety or whatever it is?
Bro, excellent. I wanted to pick your brains around something you said earlier around growing up in Blackpool, being 14, 15 in the police cells.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of work at the Community Trust with young people that might find themselves in situations that you spoke about at 14, 15. We do a lot of one-to-one work with those young people that are getting arrested, they're at risk of offending. What was your journey from 14 to 15 in terms of changing that behaviour or issues around kind of mental health? What did your journey look like to get to where you are now, I suppose?
Do you know the biggest thing that helped me was the military. I think because I had to probably grow up quite quickly. I was an half decent footballer at a young age. I was on the books at Preston and Blackpool, and I was quite. I guess when I look back, I thought I knew best for me because I was football. People at school, the teachers, you get away with things. Same in the military. If you were decent at sport, you get away with a lot of things, and it'll get you so far. But I was a bit of a little tearaway in Blackpool. I was, antisocial behaviour, drunken, disorderly, cautions for, all sorts of bits and pieces. And for me, what I learned in the military, which I try to install in young cadets in Blackpool and Lancashire now, is values. Knowing who you are and what you stand for. And you think it's funny. I remember I was about 15 and I went in the police cell, and I remember I was on Stanley Park and all the lads were banging on the police cell, and I thought I was brilliant because I was in the back of this police van, all the lads were cheering and chanting, and I got to this police cell, and I remember it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and my dad got a phone call. He was like, "Mr. Wylie, the police sergeant on the desk, we've got your son Jordan here again." And he said, "What do you want us to do with him?" And my dad, who was an former Royal Marine, Falklands veteran, he said, "Can you keep him in the cell overnight and let him learn a lesson?" And I remember breaking into, I could hear the conversation. I remember crying my eyes out in my little itchy and scratchy blanket in this little cell. And I went from being this Jack the Lad, cocky, naughty, arrogant little teenager to like this really lonely, thinking, this is not funny, I don't want to be here anymore now. It's the laughter and the jokes have gone. And actually those people who I thought my mates, they're not bothered about me. They're long gone, these were just associates really. We weren't really friends. And in the army, when I, go into places like Iraq and what have you, and you see kids who would do anything to go to school, would do anything for a meal, and I just think, you give me a lot of perspective on the world. And I think I'm messing around in teachers' classes who've worked hard all their life to go to university, to wasting people's time, and it's hard because I try and tell teenagers the same messages now, and some people will listen, the smart ones, and some will go and learn the hard way. And Blackpool, I think not just Blackpool, but Lancashire, the Northwest, there are lots of challenges with opportunities. And when opportunities are few and far between, that does turn into things like crime. And I know that you guys and Blackpool Council and lots of people are trying to create and develop more opportunities. But sometimes as well, people need to be able to see an opportunity and be given an opportunity, because then they can really flourish as well. And I think that's what the army probably did for me. It made me saw that there's much bigger than the little bit of the world that I'm in at the moment. It's a wider world out there. So I think you can achieve. I don't think it's a cliche. I'm a kid from Grange Park, pretty challenging upbringing, didn't do well at school. I've joined the army. I've done all my GCSEs, ironically. I went back and did a GCSEs, I've done my A-levels, I've done a foundation, I've done a bachelor's, I've done a master's degree, and I've gone through that whole journey, but I'm still that same 16-year-old who left school with no qualifications, but I've gone back to school, college, university, and done them. So it was all in there, but I just needed that opportunity, I needed the environment to be able to flourish and move forward. And I think what I would say is that what I've definitely learned in life now as a 40-year-old is that you will always be a product of your environment. If you're surrounded by negative people, if you're surrounded by naughty people, bad people, criminals, gangs, whatever they are, that's the limit of where you're going in life. Until you pull yourselves out of that situation and start looking at who you surround yourself with, that's you're going to be a product of that. You're the architect of your own destiny.
Yeah. I think that is some of the kind of cause for young people that, like you were saying earlier, in terms of social media, lack of positive role models. So they see other people they're associating with, whether that be kind of people online, family members, they don't know different, do they?
No, but it's tough though. It's tough. It's easier said than done, because it takes, for a young person who's a teenager, to take themselves out of what they perceive to be a friendship group and go in a different direction. That takes a lot of courage. And it takes a lot of sort of self-reflection, and a lot of unfortunately, a lot of the harshest lessons in life come from experience, not from somebody telling you. And when I go into a school, the first slide I show them is the little hatch through the Blackpool police station cell, and I show them, and straight away people start to, maybe actually this guy might have something to share here, because I'm not just another teacher who's trying to preach to him. I'm coming at it with a similar life experience maybe as them. But it's hard, it's tough, but I'm living proof that you can go and achieve anything you want, but you got to want it, and also it's not going to be easy. You got to. One thing I think we're really good at in the north is we're grafters. We're prepared to put in a shift, and as you say, we need more positive role models in not just in Blackpool, in the country, in the world. Yeah. There's not enough of them, and we also need people to give back as well. And someone said to me, I've been given great opportunities through TV and adventure, and I've had a leg up of lots of people over my journey, and I often try to pay them back. And a friend of mine who's a presenter for Sky News, a lady called Kay Burley, she gave me so much help and opportunities over the last 6-7 years. And I said to her, how can I pay you back? And she said to me, the way you pay it back in life is you pay it forward. And I thought, that's magical. And that's why, I'm volunteering to speak every cadet unit I pass, or trying to help young people, because I'm not religious, maybe a little bit spiritual, but when you try and help other people without wanting or expecting anything in return, the world looks after you. I'm truly believe that. When you're not looking for what am I going to get for doing this, and you're just helping because actually it's the right thing to do, like you guys are doing, it's the right thing to do. You've got some experience, you've got a skill set, you're opening up discussions, and you will help lots of people. And I have no doubt that you will be rewarded, not because you're looking to be rewarded, and that reward might come in saving someone's life. That's the best reward in this situation. So, I think it's amazing what you're doing, and it's really important as well, not just for Blackpool, but for mental health as a whole.
Yeah, well, I want to go back to something, and it's something that very close to me at the moment. And you talk about ADHD and your diagnosis, and obviously as a kid, and we spoke about it with Brett. I think we spoke about it with I think Nath said it as well. When ADHD as a kid, you always say, it's a naughty kid, he's got ADHD. Yeah. But obviously over time now, we're starting to realise that that's not necessarily the thing. And when you say, would you be looking for educational reforms? Like, we should be looking at more like vocational education, like going into doing your skills, or going into doing what you're doing now, or looking at setting people up for life in the real world rather than giving them maths and English and stuff, because eventually it all falls into place anyway. And it helps them people with the neurodiverse side of mental capacity. Yeah. Because sometimes traditional education isn't for everyone. And like you say, you got stuck and you didn't really enjoy it, you felt like it was a prison. Would you be promoting that if they said, well, we're going to reform everything, education, we're going to look at people who've got these neurodivergent sides to help them people flourish as well?
Oh, definitely. I think, firstly, teachers, they do an amazing job, and they're like heroes in communities, so take nothing away from what teachers deliver. But I think the education system is set up, it's centuries old, it's not changed. It's, you sit in a little box, you have tables all lined up, and you have someone stood at the front of a classroom, and you have textbooks, and there's this exchange of information, whereas half the kids in most classes are looking out the window because the brain's already drifting over here, they're not engaged in it. It's like for me, learning about maths, I'm terrible at maths, I'm rubbish at maths, but now, because I have to work out my row across an ocean, I actually enjoy doing it because it's relevant to my life. It's not like, I've never in my life used algebra or Pythagoras theory, and yet we spend weeks studying this kind of thing in a classroom. But yeah, people learn in different ways, and it's like the really academic kids in school. I don't want to stereotype here, because the really academic kids who do great in things like GCSEs and exams, not always, but they're often the kids who don't want to kick a ball around at lunchtime, or get outside more, because they learn, or they have a different approach to learning. And there's nothing wrong with either of them. They're both great, but they're different. And we cater, for me, for a very one way of learning still, a very orthodox, that's been around for as long as we've been alive and much longer. The way my mum and dad learn is the same way that kids are still learning now.
I think I was reading something about that a while ago, because I think in like Scandinavia, their teaching system is so different.
They teach
subjects, don't they, outdoors, rather than like maths, you'd learn a theme. So it might be learn about World War II, but within that, you're learning maths, geography, art.
When I was in the high Arctic about 3 years ago, I was in the Yukon in northern Canada doing an adventure, and I met this group of kids, and I'm not joking, they were primary school, so like 9 to 11. I was in all my Arctic gear, sort of all covered up, freezing. We were walking down the street with no tops on, with the fishing rods, and they were going to catch the lunch. And I just thought, these are like 10, 11 years old, and they're so, I call it like a warrior spirit. In the West, especially in this country, in America, if we get uncomfortable, we put the heating on or we switch the light on. Whereas these kids, like in the Scandinavian countries, they're taught survival skills and the skills that are going to last them for life. How to cook, how to make a fire, how to get warm, how to filter some water, things that, swimming, it's a life skill, things like that. And it's the same with cadets, like it was sort of digressing, but I went last year to the St. John's Ambulance Awards, and all the winners of these awards were Army cadets. And I'm thinking, that's amazing, because they've saved people's lives using what they're going to learn tonight, doing a bit of CPR or first aid. They've took that skill into their communities. And that's like, why are we not teaching that in a school? We could save our parents or our granddad, or, why do we not know how to use a defib?
I think that's the thing. I think we look at education, and I need to be very careful what I say, but we look at education as we skill up people, but like in the professional roles. But the people who aren't professional,
we qualify them.
Sorry, we qualify them,
Yeah.
but we can still qualify them in real life skills as well. Yeah. So like everyone can effectively walk out at a similar level,
yeah.
But we could go, right, okay, you've got the skills to survive, you've got the skills to save people's lives, you've got the skills to save people's lives in a different way. Everyone can be on a parity, in my opinion, across the board. It's just in how we operate that and how we educate them that way.
It comes back to what we were saying earlier around mental health in general, how you cope with that. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach, so 30 kids in a classroom, they're not all going to learn the same way.
No, definitely. And to be fair to teachers, I think they're constrained by curriculums and things. Yeah. They would love to get kids outside more. If you're going to learn about climate change, don't learn about it watching a video. Go outside and look at the exhaust fumes pumping out the back of a car on rush hour. If you want to learn about climate change, go down to the seaside and look at the ocean. Right, whatever it is. I just think that practical element will help so many more people, and also by feeling it, being it's like we need scientists who are going to solve tomorrow's problems about the issues that we're not dealing with now. We need inventors, creators, and often those types of people, the creative types, they're not the academic types quite often.
I think there was a percentage a couple of weeks ago. So like my history as a DJ and creative and stuff like that, and they were saying, I can't remember what the figure was, but the figure was really high of people who are neurodivergent are creatives, and you'll never ever shake that, because all they do is hyper focus on that one thing to make
it happen.
Exactly.
That was my problem, as you say there, the hyper focus. So that's how I end up neglecting relationships and loved ones, because it's not that I don't love them, I'm so hyper focused on the mission that I will do anything to achieve that mission, relentless in pursuit of a goal. But I often forget and neglect what's going on here in my peripherals, because I'm just like, and that's where it's killed my relationships. It's like a superpower in a professional environment, but it's a real negative in my personal life.
Do you ever find yourself kind of, you'll hyper focus to a point and then something will just switch you off, but when you're on a challenge, are you always in that mode?
Yeah, I'm always try to be in that mode, but then there'll be curveballs thrown in, things won't go to plan. But I also like that in a weird way. I like, people think an adventure is just going, and going and do something fun or exciting or dangerous, but actually it's all the stuff that goes on to get to the start line. It's the planning, the preparation, the logistics, the sponsors, the media. There's a whole, it's managing a big project essentially. But people only see obviously the arrival at the tower or whatever, but that's a year's worth of work to get to that stage.
No, I think that's what we're seeing as well, especially with higher education now. Like higher education is becoming a lot more vocational. Like there's courses for everything now, and we're getting away from kind of like your dentistry, your lawyer, or we are starting to see like project management, business management, like these vocational careers where people are really thriving. It's great to see. I mean, I'm looking forward to resitting my GCSE exams and seeing if Jordan's got one paddle and he's got to sail across the ocean, how many days will it take him? We're going to start wrapping things up, so I've got a couple more questions. If someone's out there struggling listening to this podcast, what's your big 3 piece of advice for them?
Get outside, exercise or move, talk to people. Definitely.
Short and sweet.
Yeah, and then finally, what's next? What's next? Where you go? Right, okay. Where are you going after the tower then? Where are we going?
Where we go?
We'll join you. We'll join you.
We've got a new series of Hunted coming out that's been filmed later in the year. We've got to go. I've got to take a group of people whale shark diving in Africa, and I love horse racing. So it's another passion of mine. So I'll be at Royal Ascot and lots of other places over the summer. But I don't encourage gambling or anything.
Are you keeping your bike once you finish with it?
I'm going to auction it off for charity. Nice. Yeah.
Where's the canoe?
It's now fully recycled.
Nice.
It got me across, but it didn't. It just got me across. Careful what I say. But yeah. I couldn't have auctioned it or donated it to an out. Yeah.
You were nearly part of the problem.
I was nearly part of the problem. Yeah. I nearly polluted the ocean with 200 bottles. It was falling apart on me.
Thank you very much. That's been absolutely incredible.
Genuine privilege and a pleasure, and keep up the awesome work.
Thank you very much. So I hope you've enjoyed the episode. Don't forget, as ever, if you have, like the video, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.